The key Macedonian attack troops are the companion cavalry, the noblemen closest to Alexander the Great, both at court and in war. The core of their army is the tough, heavy infantry, the pike phalanx. The team must coordinate these troops to outwit the vast army they face.
Can we go through sort of fairly methodically what each of the bunches are? So let's start
Okay, so these guys here are the group generals.
General at the front, then
And
what's that
after them
next
you've
line?
got the
Pikemen.
pikemen. Okay, we've got 4 of them.
The Macedonian pikemen are armed with an 18-foot pike. These disciplined professional soldiers fight shoulder to shoulder, their pikes thrust forward in a formation known as the phalanx. The hedgehog-like phalanx advances slowly and is almost unstoppable as long as it can hold formation.
Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome to more Rome 2 Total War as I talk about each of the factions turn by turn. Today we're on Macedon, or Macedon as they like to pronounce it in this game, and this is one of the more interesting and more powerful armies here. They're a bit like Egypt in that they've got a very large unit roster, but unlike Egypt, almost all of their units are incredibly useful, so they're a very strong faction just because they don't have any real garbage choices. So if you're a newer player, it's a little bit easier to play as someone like Macedon, as they're unlikely to sort of trap you into using really bad units. Now going over their roster, they've got really expensive generals and all high quality units. You've got companion cavalry, shield bearer infantry, royal peltast, melee infantry, and then you've got foot companions who are heavy pikemen. All of them are a very good choice, depends on what you want to do with your general. If you want him to be in the line, the foot companions are an excellent choice. If you want him to be assaulting the enemy, royal peltasts are good. If you want him to be safe, shield bearers are good. And then the companion cavalry are of course an excellent shock cavalry unit if you want your general to be hunting things. So moving away from the generals, we've got our melee infantry. This is the only section where the Macedonians are a little bit lacking. They've got thorax swordsmen. Thorax swordsmen are a good, solid, reliable unit. I think they're a little bit overpriced for what they can do, I've been finding. But for what they are, they're not really all that bad. I don't mind using them, they're quite good. Next up, you've got royal peltasts. These guys are actually a heavy melee infantry unit, and they're actually very strong at that. They've got ridiculously high armor penetrating statistics for a sword-style unit. And they've also got really good morale, decent armor, and defense. So they're a great all-around unit. They're very expensive, very elite. I happen to like using them. I use them to break flanks and then sort of roll the sides. Next up, we've got our spear infantry here. We've got various varieties here. The militia and the Thurios spears I would not typically recommend taking. They're sort of those sort of peasant militia units along with the levy pikemen. But these units, if you just happen to have enough money to just afford either of them can be used to intercept cavalry, and that's about it. I would keep them in your back lines to sort of try and chase down cavalry or to support your Aspis cavalry or your companion cavalry. Next up, you get into the bread and butter and meat of the spear infantry of the hoplites. They're the same sort of as most other Hellenic hoplites, very decent all-around stats, particularly defensive, pretty decent unit for their cost. Next up, we've got shield bearers. These guys are the elite version. They've got incredibly high defensive statistics, and they're really quite decent on offense as well. I think these guys are almost a match for Royal Spartans in terms of their defensive statistics. The only thing is I'm pretty sure they have slightly lower melee defense. They're just all around a very good unit. I happen to like them. They've also got this charge defense expert. But moving on from them, you move into the pike infantry. These are the backbone of the Macedonian army, unlike the other Hellenic factions who use hoplites. The pike infantry consists of the levy pikemen, who are sort of a trash unit. I would never take these personally against another person, simply because the levy pikemen break too easily, and the point of pikemen is to hold the enemy in place. So on a similar note, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got these foot companions who are a really strong, ridiculously powerful pike phalanx unit. The problem with them is that they're too expensive to really make much of a line of them, and you don't need this expensive of a unit to hold down the enemy in place. But if you've got a section of foot companions in your line somewhere, they will hold. What I tend to find is the best sort of compromise between quality, holding power, and cost is the thorax pikemen. They've got that extra 10 morale, they've got a little bit extra armor compared to the regular pikemen, and they've just got a lot of reliability behind them. They're able to hold a line quite a lot better. So they're what I tend to go to for pike infantry for the Macedonian army. Moving on, missile infantry. They've got the sort of typical selection of basic ones. In addition, they've got these Agrianian axemen or whatever. They're actually not throwing axes. They throw spears just like everyone else. They just happen to use axes in melee combat. Now, these guys are basically just peltasts. I'm not actually 100% sure why they're differentiated from other peltasts, but they're there. They function functionally identically to the other two types. They're theoretically a little bit better, I think, in melee. I'm not 100% sure about their performance there, but I do know that I prefer the light peltasts because the light peltasts have more ammunition, and the regular peltasts have more armor, so if you're going to get shot at, the regular peltasts are also better. Lastly, of course, you've got these mercenary versions, and they're excellent units, but they are very expensive for ranged units. Mercenary Cretan archers are probably the best archers in the game. Foot archers anyhow. Moving on, we've got shock cavalry. They've probably got some of the most varied shock cavalry in the game, especially for a Hellenic faction. They've got Sarissa cavalry. I would not use these for anything other than hunting down light infantry, such as archers or, maybe a routing unit, but they're not actually all that good on their own. They're really cheap though. If you need a unit to fill in 370, they're pretty much a good choice for hunting down ranged units or as a sacrificial unit. Next up, we've got the Thessalian cavalry. This is a much more sort of legitimate choice for actual shock cavalry used as shock cavalry. They're a little bit light, so they're not going to win a protracted cavalry fight against very many things, but if you can get them safely into a rear charge against infantry, they're very useful for that. And then you've got, of course, the companion cavalry, who are the famous Macedonian cavalry. They've got really excellent statistics. They work well in combat. The problem is that as shock cavalry, they tend to run in, do their hit, and if they don't kill a whole bunch of people really early on, they tend to sort of slow down in combat by contrast to other options. So while they're good, they've got all the sort of weaknesses that you would expect shock cavalry to suffer from. But they're a very strong part of the Macedonian army, and they're a good way to sort of deliver hammer and anvil strikes, which was the favored strategy for Alexander the Great. Moving along, we've got missile cavalry. Again, I don't have a great basis of comparison for these guys. I don't actually think that they're any different from other factions' missile cavalry or javelin throwing ones at any rate. So they've got options there, but they all seem fairly similar to me. In all honesty, I actually think the fact that they've got the skirmisher cavalry, which is lighter, I think that's actually a pretty good option for them, simply because you don't really need the additional stats that the Tarentine cavalry or the mercenary Thracian cavalry come with, since all they're really there for is to throw their javelins until they run out and maybe hunt down some light archers or something. Moving along here, we're going to ignore the artillery as always, since they're basically the same for everybody, and get to the melee cavalry. We've got citizen cavalry, your standard Hellenic cavalry. They're not bad, they're not good, they just sort of are there. They're good at their job for what they do. And then moving on, we've got the Aspis companion cavalry. Now, unlike the other companion cavalry, these guys are sort of a dedicated, stuck in their melee cavalry unit, and I actually prefer them over the regular companion cavalry because in this game, cycle charging doesn't really work all that effectively. So these guys can charge in, get stuck into combat, and do really well over a protracted period of time. So Aspis companion cavalry is an excellent unit for just tearing through units for a long period of time. And they tend to just wreck whatever cavalry they come in contact with over a protracted period of time as well. So they're a very excellent choice. They're what I tend to use when I'm playing as Macedon. But you can mix it up by playing other cavalry. There's definitely a reason to take companion cavalry if you want to get that definite powerful shock charge in the rear against a unit. Same with the Thessalian cavalry if you can get them in without cavalry interception. But Aspis cavalry is my favorite of the lot. That comes down to personal preference more than anything, though. So, moving on to the campaign, let's look at their faction-specific benefits. So, as a successor kingdom, just like Egypt, they've got Alexander's legacy and successor conflicts. This makes it easier to take over other provinces and control them and control the unhappiness that they would normally be suffering from. And successor conflict means that it's a lot easier to take over all of the Greek city-states, and that's because the Greek city-states used to be sort of part of the Alexandrian kingdom. Anyway, their specific bonuses are commercial contract leases, plus 10% wealth from industrial buildings, barbarian subduers, plus 10% morale when fighting barbarian tribes, and Hellenic rivalry, major diplomatic penalty with all Hellenic factions. So the thing about these guys is they've got bonuses to fight the Greeks, and they've got bonuses to fight the barbarians, but you're typically going to wind up fighting more Greeks because they've also got that huge diplomatic penalty that's going to cause them to go to war with you. Anyway, let's start this up, and I will see you on the campaign map. Okay there, welcome to the campaign map. We've got our capital over here in Pella, and we've got Pulpadiva over here in the north. And something unique about Macedon is that they've got two region capitals, but they've got no provincial villages. So they start off with very little food, as you'll notice. They've got a surplus of 2. So it's actually difficult for them to sort of grow early on as they have a low food surplus. But one of the things you can notice right away is that Pella is in a region with Larissa and Apollonia, which is Epirus. And everyone likes to dick over Epirus. So, you know, if you're Athens, you go dick over Epirus. If you're Sparta, you go dick over Epirus. If you're Epidamnos, you go dick over Epirus, even though you're an NPC faction. So, you know, all those guys kind of just sort of take over these easy villages because they can. Now, our starting armies over here, we've got our general, which is in a shield bearer infantry unit, a very good elite unit. We've got companion cavalry, which is really strong, but then you've got levy pikemen and javelin men, which are really, really weak. So they've got that sort of weird dichotomy there. Over here in the north, we have a stronger army of 3 units of hoplites. We've got our general and the shield bearer hoplites, and then we've got 2 javelin men. So we've got a slightly more solid army to the north. To start off, we can recruit militia hoplites and slingers in the north. And if I recall, I think we have got the better recruitment province down here. We've got the ability to recruit hoplites right off the bat, as well as levy pikemen and javelin men and slingers. So in Pella, we can get some nicer units. It's unfortunate that we're going to be moving our army out pretty much right away. We're going to have to hire some mercenaries, though, so let's go ahead and do that. But the reason that we're hiring that is because we're going to go take over Epirus, because that's what we do. Anyway, let's go assassinate their general here.
All men must die.
And the reason I'm doing this is that he's in a unit of okay, well that's good enough. He was in a unit of Hellenic Royal Guard, which are an incredibly powerful elite unit, so we're going to kill him, and then we're going to declare war and charge our army in. Now, if you fail to kill his general, you can just neglect to declare war on that first turn. You know, just wait for a second turn before you declare war on him. So with all our auxiliary mercenaries or what have you, our game is going to freeze. Just kidding. Okay, so our spy, I think, has a level now. Yeah, so let's go do that. This one has attendance, assassination. Okay, so nothing too important here. Let's just take that. We're going to work on our cities here. We can upgrade basically basic buildings here. I'm going to work on industry since we have got bonuses to that, and we're going to work on the same thing in Pulpadeva. What we're going to do is conquer other territories and use them for some food-producing buildings primarily. So let's move our army down south here.
You have further orders?
Start recruiting some crap troops. That'll be good enough for now. And yeah, so at this point, we've basically got Larissa. That'll be relatively easy to take over, but we're also going to wipe out Anthea, which we're at war with right now. And this barbarian faction is going to probably lead us into further east, but I don't really necessarily want to move too far east too quickly, since I do know that we're going to be getting in trouble against the Hellenic faction. So make peace with the barbarians if you can, and if you can't, you know, don't worry about it. So we're going to move our fleet into Pella to sort of ease unrest a little bit. We can get it back up to positive that way. And now let's get into this battle against Larissa with Macedon. So with the advantage of his Hellenic Royal Guard being dead, all he has are these militia hoplites, which are a crap unit. He's got mobs and he's got some slingers, which are all crap units, and then he's got his hoplites, which are his one good unit. Without killing his general, assassinating his general, he'd have that Hellenic Royal Guard, and we'd be in a lot more trouble, since they can take on head-on most of our units and either win or draw, or just cause a lot of casualties before they go down. Anyway, once again, I'll turn this off so that I can wait till the battle screen loads and avoid that horrible thing the sound does. Okay, so here we are on the fields around Larissa once again, the number one target of all Greek city-states to just immediately take over. I was not paying over much attention. Apparently this is a Tarentine cavalry. Well, whatever. That is perfectly fine. We're going to take our cavalry and try and move in through the side here and try and get a surprise ambush with our companion cavalry in particular. That ought to let us crack through a lot of his defenses fairly quickly. Okay, so moving in, the Macedonian army at this particular point in the game is unfortunately a little bit... I don't actually know what it's supposed to really be based off of. I think it should have more pikemen and less hoplites, just because that's sort of the legacy Alexander left behind. But it just could be that, you know, they've decided to go this way since it makes them a little bit easier to balance in terms of that. Since the pikes early on are a lot sort of weirder. It makes it harder to use. They're harder to use than hoplites. And the pikemen are also a lot stronger if used correctly. So it would sort of upset the balance of the game a little bit in that they can't make them too inexpensive and easy to access, as that would provide problems. But at the same time, they couldn't make them too inexpensive, too difficult to use. But let's just get our companion cavalry up here. I kind of moved my cavalry too far off that side. Okay, so yeah, just trying to get my slingers there, but let's just move in here.
Spear infantry, ready, at your service. General!
Now let's get our general up the flank.
Infantry at your command.
And start firing away at whatever here.
Fire! Cavalry.
Okay, so we've got our cavalry. They're just gonna mob through this slinger unit here.
Missile armed raiders. Now!
Our general is under attack.
We're gonna
waiting.
trample on these guys so that they can just tear straight through this mob here.
Double time!
Don't want our general just taking rocks for no good reason here.
Ready!
I'm a little bit slow right now. I had brandy for breakfast. Seemed like a good idea at the time, but clearly having brandy for breakfast is something that could potentially cause problems, like impaired motor functioning and complete derping.
Light infantry at your command. Javelin men.
I think my javelins got tied into the melee there a little bit. Let's draw them out.
At your service.
So our pikes. Who are these guys from? Citizen hoplites. That's fine. Okay, I'm assuming these guys have polished off those slingers by now. It looks like it.
The battle is turning in our favor.
So we're going to swoop our cavalry around back here. Let's move our Tarentine cavalry to just capture that. But our companion cavalry, who's smashed through that side there, we're just going to charge straight into the lead here. And sort of this is the brilliance of the companion cavalry by contrast to other starting cavalry that you'll sometimes get, is that you can just run roughshod over units. These guys are absolute terrors on the battlefield. They're probably some of the best early game cavalry that you can access. And personally, I like them more than elephants since they're a little bit more reliable. Alright, that's that enemy down. Once again, we've conquered Larissa. This is probably the city that I've taken over more than any other, but let's end the battle. And let's see you back. Okay, there, we're back on the campaign map here. We're going to just go capture and occupy this region here.
Waiting for orders.
And I'm not going to be working too heavily on any sort of slavery economy for this particular faction, simply because I don't think I can control the unhappiness of doing that. So let's give our commander, I think Alexandrian ones are best with zeal, so let's go ahead and take that. Now, this army, I kind of want to march on Apollonia right away, which means that I'm not going to be able to reinforce it very heavily, which means I can't really get more mercenary hoplites. The problem being that I am going to have to disband these mercenaries on account of a lack of income otherwise. As you can see, my income bar is basically 0. So I'm going to have to disband all those guys. That's perfectly fine by me, though. We can't afford to build our farm in Larissa. Thankfully, it's producing olive oil, which has increased our food production just a little bit. Now we've got a public order penalty of 30. I believe that, yeah, our provincial instability is actually fairly low, and that's due to that Macedonian bonus against provincial instability. Makes them excellent conquerors. And we're basically just going to steamroll Epirus because that's the popular thing to do. We're going to let's open up our diplomacy tab here. As you can see, everyone really hates us, and that's sort of the disadvantage of this. There are some barbarian tribes who might be willing to offer trade agreements, but I mean, the thing is that early on, people don't like trading with you typically, since you haven't really proven yourself. You don't have a variety of resources yet.
For your speech.
So as you can see, we can't really get any trade agreements. We won't be able to get Egypt to play ball.
Speak if you
just
must,
on account.
but do not expect.
Yeah, no. And we've of course got the client state of Athens and our defensive ally of Sparta. Neither of them are willing to trade with us either, I'm pretty sure.
Be welcome here and speak.
Yep. So we're going to probably have to work up our economy just a little bit before we can actually trade anything. And that's sort of the problem with being these guys, is that your locals that you could potentially trade with don't like you. Anyone that you could potentially trade with, you don't really see yet, and even when you do find them, typically they aren't going to like you enough to let you just get trade agreements. So anyway, this is how I sort of start off with Macedon. It's a very aggressive push in multiple directions, and it sort of bolsters up their sort of weak early economy, especially since they don't have anything supporting their main villages. The reason I'm not upgrading this, by the way, if you're wondering why I have the surplus population without expanding it, is because the game, if you've got an expanded city without anyone in it for too long, will invite a slums in the side of your city, which decreases food and happiness and all that other stuff for nothing really beneficial. So basically, you want to avoid slums. You know, should be obvious. Anyhow, this is my look at Macedon. We'll get to a battle in just a minute, but I hope that you've found this informative, and I hope to see you all on the battlefield. Hey there, YouTube. I'm Yukitsu. This is the Yukitsu Times. Welcome to my channel. We've already been through this, actually. I've had some problems with a few of the multiplayer games I've been playing lately, in that I've been having a lot of desyncs or whatever. I think it might mostly be on my opponent's end, but still, it's something to consider. But, you know, nothing too serious. I actually just had the last one I just did. I was actually me that disconnected, but there've been a lot lately. Anyway, this is my Macedonian battle. I've got a strong pike center with the sort of Royal Guard One's Foot Companions in the center. That's going to be my general's unit. I've got 4 units of Thorax Pikemen, and I've got 4 units of these Royal Peltasts. And then I've got a mix of Companion Cavalry, Aspis Companion Cavalry, and these other Citizen Cavalry. So I've got a very strong cavalry component. I'm up against Epirus, so it's going to be a very similar faction that I'm up against, but not quite identical. So let's ready up here. Now, I have 2 of these Companion Cavalry because they're 100 cheaper than the Aspis Companion Cavalry, and I was short $200, so that's the reason I have got those. But I do actually like it when I can get these Aspis Companion Cavalry a little bit better, but it doesn't really matter too much in this case. The Companion Cavalry is still excellent. So what we're going to try and do in this particular battle is pin him down on our phalanxes, and then swoop around the side with the Peltasts and with our cavalry. So that should be our general strategy here. So our Epirus is one of the Greek factions. It's relatively peculiar. They've got a weird mix of units, but I don't remember them having anything too wonky or too good, other than, like, I think they had Hellenic Royal Guard, so that's what you typically see these guys taking, which will beat my Thorax Pikemen. So I do have to get around the flanks of these guys. Probably shouldn't have readied up. Looks like my opponent's a little bit slower. So his army's over there. If you're wondering why I've been having so few missile units lately, it's because I keep getting rain and fog. These sort of reduce the efficacy of these sort of missile units in quite a large degree, especially archers, since it reduces removes your ability to use flaming arrows. So when I see the maps like that, I just sort of drop a lot of shooting. Normally I have 2 archer units in this army setup. But yeah, so that's something you need to sort of look at. You can see it in the sidebar on the right, the weather, the conditions, the map, all that information. Some of the times you'll see that it's foggy, you'll want to reduce the number of shooting units that you have, and sometimes you'll see that it is raining. You'll want to take a... You can't rely on flaming projectiles to defeat elephants, for instance, in that situation. Okay, so what's he got? He's got hoplites. Okay, that's that one group. And as a range component is archers so far. So let's it's probably, he's got some Grenadian axemen or whatever you want to call them. Okay, so he's got a fairly stretched out line. I'm gonna have to stretch out to match him a little bit. I could do this like Alexander did and have that crazy thin line of troops, but who knows. Hellenic Royal Cavalry. Oh yeah, I forgot about those guys. Okay, so we're gonna peel off 2 of our elite cavalry to one side, and we're gonna peel off the remainder over to this side and see how that does for us. Let's start moving our army forward. I think it looks like he's taken quite an investment into ranged units here, so I do want to move against him quickly. Okay.
Warriors of Macedon, in service of the people.
Now then.
General, ready and waiting.
Looks like he's trying to move his units backwards against me. What are these guys on the flank here? Hellenic Royal Guardsmen. Looks like... Let's do this. The reason I'm doing this is that my Royal Peltas will get intimately against him. Oops, that was weird. Okay, so let's do that. He's trying to kite against me. His Hellenic Royal Cavalry is on that flank now.
Royal Peltasts, melee infantry ready. Thorax pikemen, foot companions.
Let's get all of our pikemans into phalanx formation.
At the double!
Swift riders at your command. Aspis companion cavalry. Forward!
Your orders.
Quickly now! All forward!
Looks like Epirus has moved his units sort of strangely here. I did, however, screw up that encounter. Need to get this companion cavalry around quickly.
Ready and waiting. Attack their position!
Slowly move on those Hellenic Royal Guards there.
Aspis companion cavalry. Hey, charge! Pull back!
Lost that unit of companion cavalry. That is fine. Let's try and take out this Hellenic Royal Guard cavalry here.
By your command!
This infantry line is starting to waver,
Yes,
which
Commander.
is good.
Aspis companion cavalry.
Your orders. Shoot riders at the double!
Yeah, his Hellenic his Hellenic infantry is vastly superior to my own, so he did win that. Oops.
Slingers! Taxis!
Get our slingers up there.
Cavalry. Your orders.
Okay, so we've managed to shatter this flank, it looks like. Gonna start moving our troops over to this side.
Back! Withdraw!
And it looks like we're starting to lose this side here pretty badly.
Advance at speed!
So we've each taken a flank here.
Thorax pikeman! General!
Right engage! Slingers!
Start working on those Hellenic Royal Guard there. I kind of want this guy to keep working on those guys so they don't reform.
Quick march!
And then we need to start mopping up these archers before they get
By your
into
command!
a good position again or something.
Heavy horse at your command.
Okay, good, they're gone. Okay,
Royal Peltasts! Warriors of Macedon! Royal Peltasts!
Royal Peltas on this side have managed to really anchor that fight for us when we otherwise would have been losing. Managed to recover that fight for us. Let's get our cavalry working again. Okay, and it looks like we're finally just starting to sort of grind our opponent down from the sides here. And looks like this unit is also in trouble. And let's charge all our cavalry into this general unit here. Or actually, let's do that and that. Start moving our units to attack him more directly here. He's got quite a lot of shooting here. Don't know if he was paying attention to the weather or if he just didn't really care, but archers are a lot less effective in the rain for a variety of reasons. And that will pretty much be our fight. So that is the Macedonian army, used approximately as you want to use them, sort of wrapping around the flanks of a lot of things with your cavalry and your better infantry. It's really a very sort of strong faction, but a lot of their units are very expensive as well. I didn't really cover this, but they're an expensive, pricey faction, so you typically end up fielding smaller armies with Macedon than you do with other people. Let's get these guys, chase these guys. So when you play Macedon, do keep in mind that you'll usually fight outnumbered even if your opponent has got quite a few elite units. And I think that might have been the case here. I think my opponent did have... let's see here. Yeah, no, he deployed exactly even numbers, so... you know, you typically fight from sort of that numbers disadvantage. In that case, he was deploying Hellenic Royal Guard and all that other high-quality stuff, so very close in terms of that. Anyway, that's been my battle with Macedon, and that's our Macedon look. I hope you found this informative, and of course I hope to see you for the next one.